She accomplished her task of reaching the center of the muddy, swampy island filled with mold, fungi, and rotted-out prehistoric insect corpses. Though the gelatin mud creatures infused with the souls of the damned weren't too difficult to subdue, the half-genie wasn't sure if the otherworldly lone guardian of the island's underground would allow passage into the island's depths. Wearing a ceremonial death mask convinced him she did indeed belong within. Little did she know then what dark secrets about a friend this not-so-ordinary village held. So if you haven't guessed it yet, for my next gaming mystery I'll be looking at the Shantae series. What praise can I heap upon the Shantae series that hasn't been said yet? For me growing up, Castlevania and Mega Man on the NES and SNES were always my favorite games with respect to 2D platforming. I liked Metroid as well, though to a lesser extent. We see the Legend of Zelda's influence in its item and dungeon layout styles, and since I've heard Shantae was originally supposed to charm animals with her dances and then ride them, I also wonder if the gameplay of Little Nemo may have at least had some influence. Shantae has left me pleased to see that in modern times, a market for such a game still exists. Though it must be said I initially missed out on the first game, having not heard about it until an issue of Nintendo Power from sometime around 2008, when it was covered as a rare Game Boy Color gem, but I have been with the series at each new release since Risky's Revenge. This theory video was supposed to center around Rottytops, Shantae's fun-loving prankster zombie friend, but I ended up jumping down a longer rabbit hole than I initially thought. So in the third game of the series, The Pirate's Curse, Shantae teams up with her nemesis from the first two games, Risky Boots, to locate all dens of evil and prevent an even more powerful enemy, the Pirate Master, from returning to the shores of Sequin Land. It's the fourth den of evil which leads us into the deep mystery I'll be talking about today. My first time playing through and entering the village of Lost Souls gave me a much different impression than I would have later on. After figuring out how to fool the Hexer Guardian outside with a death mask to gain entry, I proceed to the village he describes as a place where you forget all your suffering and misdeeds. Entering the central area where rather ominous music plays, I first encountered the Three Geckos from the Oasis Town Gecko Chamber in the original game. Fresh off playing the original Shantae on the 3DS Virtual Console, they were immediately recognizable to me, though an encounter with them here felt rather surreal to say the least, especially since they seemed to be endlessly searching for their lost coins. On the next platform just above, I encountered a strangely friendly girl, who at first seems to be here only to give a basic introduction to the village and the memory swiping power it has over the souls inside, yet Shantae herself finds her oddly familiar. It may sound strange, but my very early assumption on this girl was that she was some sort of underworld secretary, compiling lists of the souls who belong in the village. Strange to look back on now, but perhaps I was fixated on the pen she was holding and wondered why she had it. Shantae apparently realizes who this girl is within the first conversation, and I'm ashamed to say that I failed to understand who this was from early clues like her sprite movements or poses. Finding out how Shantae knew her took helping out the geckos and getting the girl her locket back. Upon realizing she had two older brothers, the truth finally dawned on me. Oh, right. I'm so smart. So with that out of the way, we move on to summon this great warrior guy known as the Wanderer, get his scent, open the way into the dungeon, defeat the Sob Dagron, boss dragon, whatever. On the way out, we are informed by the Wanderer he has apparently defeated the Hexer, enabling everyone to leave. Though as he states, and what becomes evident if you come back later at any time, none of the souls ever actually leave during the game, with the exception of one Shantae actually takes, which is where things get interesting. He gives you what he describes as a sleeping soul, and tasks Shantae with awakening it. Quite strange, but more on that later. So, now that it's quite clear this girl is indeed the lost soul of Rottytops, What exactly is going on here? I guess we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, we do know that Roddy is in fact dead. No secret there. This is just a little too surreal not to look for more answers. So let's get right into my first hypothesis on how Roddy died and the circumstances. When poking around social media a bit, this mystery has generated some discussion. One theory that has at least some traction is that Rottytops may have committed suicide. Really dark, I know. But considering the fact she does make some pretty ominous statements like, "I'm only truly happy when I sleep," and other possible clues, such as her appearance as a schoolgirl, leads me to believe this is a snapshot in time of the way she looked the moment she died. The fact she is a loner in the village, and the fact that her name is Rottytops, could itself be a clue that she was bullied. Some have claimed this was once a common schoolyard insult for kids who were unintelligent. I can't really endorse the accuracy of this claim myself, since I've personally never really heard of it. It doesn't really make sense either. Rottytops is in fact always depicted as being an intelligent character throughout the series. And besides, I think it's safe to say that Poe, Abner Cadaver, and Rottytops weren't the zombie trio's original names as humans. And truthfully, I'm going to completely shoot this theory down, since it doesn't really explain the most obvious fact about Rottytops, and that she has been afflicted with the zombie curse. How would suicide even accomplish that? Also, not only her, but both her brothers were also afflicted with the same curse. I really felt that all these facts just couldn't be a coincidence, and I needed to regroup and think of something else. But the more I think about the village, the more I realize that almost nothing adds up about it. Exhibit A. Why is Rottytops alone here? Where is Abner and Poe? Aren't they dead as well? Abner gives us hints in dialogue when you first meet him, and at the end of the game as well, that he too has lost all his memory of his past life. I also realize that there seem to be at least 3 types of souls in the village as well. Something I don't think other theorists have noticed to my knowledge. You have standard souls, with a very well-defined appearance. Examples include the Geckos and Rottytops. Next you have what I started calling the shadow type of soul, a silhouette of a person darkened out, of which of course the Wanderer is. And the final type is what I dubbed the Will-O-Wisp type, of which the soul that turns out to be Barracuda Joe is. I came up with a few reasons of why souls vary in their appearance and can't really settle on one myself. Number 1. The appearance is time sensitive. Souls first arrive at the village in an amorphous state and slowly solidify over time into their more recognizable forms. This makes sense since Joe was the most recent arrival. Or, number 2. Their appearance is actually relative to the individual. That is to say, if the person, Shantae in this case, knows the person well, they appear more clearly. This doesn't make too much sense. I don't see why the Geckos are any more known by or connected to Shantae than Joe is. So the reason is most likely the former. But then again, the appearance of Joe's soul changes at one point by growing a mustache when he realizes more about who he was. Could it be relative instead to how much they remember about themselves? That still doesn't really explain it, as the clearly defined souls are just as clueless as to who they are. So with all this to deal with, I really needed more answers. It was time for me to try another crack at the game. This time I would really pay attention to what the Hexer said at the entrance to begin with. I only remembered that I was barred from entry without having the death mask. I remembered there was some other criteria he mentioned for being accepted in. Ah, yes. You suffered much in life, and caused the suffering of others. Your burden is heavy indeed. And only after he says this, I'm now able to enter the village? So that's it. To be accepted inside, souls need to be from a person who's been particularly bad in life to necessitate losing all memories. And even then, the text here implies they still have a choice to enter the village for all eternity. Okay, this really explains a lot. Interestingly, this means Shantae was only lucky to get in herself, as this random death mask she picked up happened to have the right aura to allow entry. So, if we look at this another way, the memory loss effects of the village could be viewed as some sort of gift for the suffering, grim as that is. With this new knowledge, let's try and analyze the inhabitants and see how this applies to them. Why are they here? Take the Geckos. Could they have both suffered and caused a lot of suffering in life? Well, they were obsessive gamblers from Oasis Town, which is dark enough on its own. Perhaps many lost their life savings at the Gecko Chamber. That would qualify as causing suffering, but suffering themselves? Perhaps let's just say that a young half-genie controlled by yours truly may have taken advantage of soft resets and the infamous bidding bug and milk the place of its cash very quickly. Unable to handle the massive gambling debts, the Gecko trio were forced out of business by their creditors, and maybe not in the natural sense. Wow. You know that sad face the Geckos make when they lose to Shantae, which we all thought nothing of at the time? Yeah, it'll probably haunt a few of my nightmares now. So we have another interesting fella to analyze. It's Karnov. Yeah, couldn't contain it any longer. But yes, the two common speculations about the Wanderer are that he's either Karnov, due to the obvious dialogue references to gameplay from his universe, or Shantae's father, or as some are inclined to believe, maybe even both, since all he remembers about his life is searching for a long-lost daughter he thinks he has, which actually sounds kinda dark too. Karnov is no stranger to dishing out pain and suffering, and I'm sure he has suffered himself, having died without finding his daughter. I'm more of a newcomer to the Karnov games as well, but interestingly enough, this theory is actually plausible, believe it or not. I see his universe is quite similar to Shantae's. I even wonder if certain enemies like the centipede women from Karnov may have inspired the scorpion gals in Shantae. But more importantly, genies also exist in the Karnov games. I just wonder how on earth Karnov may have left his frozen motherland to hook up with some genie.
General?
Da! He is war hero. He needs rest.
Well, it's probably not important. Now, for what horrifying reason did Joe want to wipe out his memory for all eternity? Well, he was going to marry Sky. Well, nah, I'm sure working for Ammo Baron is probably reason enough. And if not, he was kind of a diaper model as well, so... Oh man, what a guy. Now that leaves us with our old friend Rottytops. But how to start here when we know nothing about her life? Well, Rottytops does have something unbelievably strange going on with her that we don't see with any other lost soul, and that clearly some sort of psychological connection exists between her lost soul and her body. And in addition to the theory that Karnov may be unknowingly talking with the daughter he's actually searching for, Rottytops clearly is referring to Shantae as her best friend that she wishes she could reach out to, but always drives away. She even seems to be implying that somehow her consciousness may be transported back into her body when she sleeps to go on the adventures her zombie form goes on, but then warps back to the village where the memory loss effects quickly wipe out any details of the events. I mentioned before that some people believe when Roddy uses the word sleep that it may be some sort of euphemism for something. I tend to agree, as I don't know why a disembodied soul would ever need to sleep. I think this term merely describes this strange psychological connection the soul and body have with each other. Trying to analyze further for any signs of clues, we take a look at the outfits of both Rottys. Very little of the schoolgirl style outfit remains. She completely changed the school uniform for a torn tank top and cutoffs, and shortly after stole a pair of earrings from Etna.
Nice! Some nerve!
She also no longer needs to wear glasses apparently. I suppose that's a perk of becoming a cursed animated undead corpse. The one and only item retained is her yellow headband. Really odd thing. Why go out of your way to change the style of this character, but not go that one step further and either replace or remove the headband as well? Unless this was intentional to symbolize this weird psychic mind connection she still has with her body. Perhaps I should next attempt to explain something I thought would be simple. It looks like it has no clear answers. How exactly does the zombie curse work in the Shantae series? What's known about the civilized zombies is that when they first become zombies, they are mindless hordes that crave only meat and brains. and that drinking coffee of all things can actually civilize them. Coffee. Is there any brain it can't wash? What nobody seems to remember is how any of the zombies discovered this. I would think that most likely someone must have tried to feed a zombie coffee at some point. Okay, this should bring us to my second hypothesis about how Rottytops died. One really concerning aspect of this theory is her brother Abner's adverse reaction to hearing that Shantae has found the village of the Lost Souls, even brought back an unidentified soul. This fear of the village, and of wandering souls in general, could be due to his nature as a zombie. But one other odd thing doesn't sit right here. Why is there no reaction from Rottytops? Why does he appear to know all about the village, but Roddy has no idea what it is? Okay, so my next theory is unfortunately no less dark than the suicide theory. We know zombies must drink coffee to stay civilized, and it's pretty important considering how desperate they were to get a lifetime supply of it in Risky's revenge. So it's also safe to say that when all zombies first become cursed, they are the uncivilized variety. Why is this important? Well, all three of the siblings are now zombies. Maybe it's possible that one became a zombie and attacked the other two, spreading the curse to them. I mean, this is a seriously dark thought. Can't imagine what it might be like if you were Rottytops and just when you got home from school, mindless undead versions of your own brothers attacked you. It could provide an obvious motive for Abner to want Roddy's soul to remain in this village and keep her memories from returning. It would be awfully bad news for him if that were to happen. But I have an alternate theory here. A more innocent explanation for his behavior could even be that if Roddy's soul and body were ever to unite, she could actually just go back to being alive. How would they know this? Strangely enough, Roddy and Abner seem to have experience at helping wandering souls find their way back to their bodies. I mean, bringing Joe's soul back literally removed the curse and made him alive again. So it's reasonable to expect it would also work in a zombie's case. This could be very bad for Abner and Poe, since an alive Rottytops wouldn't be able to hang around with her brothers anymore. And it would be even worse for her if she had no place to go and became roommates with Skye. But it would be just alright with me. But there's still some real problems with this theory. One major question goes completely unanswered as far as I can see, and I could be wrong, but it never is definitively revealed how to become a zombie in the Shantae series. I was just assuming it worked like a typical horror contagion, but looking at what evidence we do have, this doesn't appear to be the case. Shantae herself doesn't become one if attacked, and not one character in this series has ever become one this way. I'm really inclined to believe that the curse may either take special magic, or be location specific in some way. But if anyone has any guesses, I'd love to hear about them.
It's a secret lab where they take the brains out of zombies and put them in the heads of other zombies to create a race of super zombies!
In searching for more clues that could tell us anything, I stumbled upon something else troubling. Rottytops is really quite a reckless character. She cares about and loves her friends, no doubt, but foreseeing the consequences of her actions, not so much. That leads us to my third possible theory, and the one I actually believe most likely to be correct. Rottytops' most likely cause of death was some sort of after-school prank gone horribly wrong. Rottytops, at her finest, probably entered some cursed graveyard, of the pet cemetery variety, to scare some of her classmates on the way home. The prank backfired horrifically, and Roddy realized too late that going to a cursed graveyard was probably a bad idea. When Abner and Poe realized that their little sister hadn't come home yet, they rushed to save her, but ended up dead and cursed in the cursed burial grounds as well. I mean, think about it. Everything fits into place. The strange schoolgirl outfit her soul was wearing, which I still believe is likely what she was wearing when she died. We finally have an explanation of why her brothers both coincidentally died and were also inflicted with the zombie curse. And her brother's very protective behavior towards her that she was beginning to remember when she picked up the locket becomes clearly relevant. Certainly Rottytops doesn't consider the consequences of her actions very well. I mean, she literally pranked Shantae in this game. It had some potentially deadly outcomes as well. Even after she realized the soul was Joe's, she appeared to still want to use it to set up some kind of zany prank. Abner also seems to lecture Roddy as if he remembers that she frequently causes trouble. He's also happy that Shantae has a good influence on her. I mean, this is mostly because Shantae has the skills to survive her pranks, but it's a kind thought. Finally, we have a great explanation of why she chose to enter the Village of Lost Souls in the first place. Remember, the Hexer permits entry only for those who have suffered a lot themselves and have also caused the suffering of others. This would surely apply greatly to Rottytops in this theory, having first caused her own untimely death but also her own brother's. Her soul likely wandered alone in extreme guilt and anguish until finally discovering the place she truly belonged. The Village of Lost Souls. Now, having forgotten what happened due to her psychic connection, the zombie form of Rottytops now lives happily with her brothers once more. Albeit as members of the undead who must guzzle coffee to keep their sanity, but they continue on. Abner is still most likely lying about forgetting his past life, his imposed souls having never gone to the village. This time his reasons for pretending to forget are to protect Rottytops from the truth. He and Poe having already forgiven her long ago. It may even be possible this was all his plan from the beginning. He may have even somehow guided Rottytops' soul to the village himself in a bid to help her forget and move on with the afterlife together. His adverse reaction to Shantae discovering the village and his murmurs about the village apparently being part of a night job of his that she should stay out of, and the fact he almost seems to guilt-trip Shantae about how Poe and Roddy is all he seems to have left, seems to show us that he's concerned Rottytops' soul may escape the village and she'll soon remember whatever happened from their past life. There is also one final clue that seems like nothing in isolation, actually strongly implicates Abner. You can trade the same death mask to him for a pirate flare, but amazingly he only offers this trade after he knew Shantae got into the village with it. Could he actually be headed off to the village to check on what may have happened to Roddy? It also could be evidence that he can't get into the village himself since he needs someone else's death mask. But who knows? At the end we find out that Abner and Poe are going off on an adventure to rediscover their past lives. Though oddly enough they plan to rejoin the zombie caravan, but this could only be to ask other zombies for any information regarding their past, and they may still plan on searching the village later. Of course, I'm not really sure since all of this seems to end on a cliffhanger. The last thing we know about the village is it's now open for souls to come or go, and the Hexer laments the fact that his master, whom we never see, could be angry with him for allowing this to happen. Poe's statement about Rottytops having a head start on finding her past life seems to be an open confirmation that he and Abner know for a fact Shantae made contact with the lost soul of their sister. Maybe they are telling the truth that, like her, they don't know about their past. It doesn't take anything away from the fact that dark circumstances may have led to them becoming zombies. Whether they are sincere about trying to get back their old lives or if they'll ever get them back as Joe did, we'll never know. One final word as well. I find it interesting that when trying to guess what Joe's soul did in life, she got it right on the third guess. Mighty coincidence. But thing is, if we rewind just one guess, the second guess about the memory being about true love and remembering someone for all time, it's so crazy, but that guess is also correct for someone who also died in the same game. The guy on Saliva Island, who read yet another kind of death curse. And what's more, this guy also never shows up in the village. So 2 out of 3 of these are correct. Or is it maybe even 3 out of 3? Something foul they wouldn't forget. Unless they found a place they could forget. Huh, Roddy. Well, that's about all I have to say about this theory, everyone. I know that the first 3 Shantae games are considered a 3-parter, while Half Genie Hero is at its core a reset of the series. In that game, Rottytops' human form does appear, but as a metaphorical stand-in for the fact Shantae considers her like a human friend. It shouldn't be thought of as the actual soul's appearance, since it happened in Shantae's mind. In 7 Sirens, though, the appearance is quite a lot more interesting. You can turn Roddy herself into her human form with the refresh dance for a very short period of time. You could take this as a mere Easter egg, or if you were more serious, perhaps the refresh dance literally does remove the zombie curse, and allow brief reunification with her lost soul she shares a connection with before the zombie curse snaps back into place and boots her soul out. I really don't know for sure, and again, 7 Sirens and half Genie Hero don't appear to be canon with the first 3 games. Who knows for sure if Roddy's soul is even in the same village or not. Given all this, it's difficult to say if we'll ever get any clear answer in a future game. And personally, if I were WayForward, I would be very careful revealing too much. Ruining too much of the mystery with characters like this can often hurt more than it can help a character's appeal. Besides, the real purpose on their part was to finish up the character arcs of both Shantae and Rottytops, and let Shantae discover that, contrary to the way she feels about Rottytops, she does actually care for her quite a lot and considers her a close friend. But it's still a shame for us that this gaming mystery will likely continue to keep us up at night for years to come. Well, to wrap it up, if you have any more interesting ideas or theories about Rottytops, I'd love to hear all about them in the comments. But until next time, farewell.